Hi, I'm John Hyde from PublicSectorPM.com.
And I'm Bernardo Torado from the Project Box. We're your hosts for PMTV, a program where we host group discussions with prominent project managers within the industry.
Now today we have, I'm hoping again, 3 special guests, but I've just got 2 for you right now. We have Lindsay Scott, Director of Aris People, Project Management Recruitment Specialists, and I have David Fraser. He's a Program Director, Consultant and Change Leader, and he's the author of the award-winning book, Relationship Mastery, A Business Professional's Guide. Welcome, everybody.
Hello.
Hi there. The topic for today is, why do PMOs fail?
Okay, and we've got a first question. We'd like to put it to Lindsay. Lindsay, can you start off by telling us what types of PMO exist?
Oh, yeah, good question. And I think before we get into PMOs failing and things, I think it really is vital that we actually distinguish what we mean by PMOs and the different types of PMOs that we have. Just to start off at the what I would say at the bottom of the hierarchy, which is a project office, which is essentially something that supports and assists the project manager and a project sponsor in their duties in delivering and managing a project. So it's very much at project level. So for example, the types of functions that they're performing in a project office at this level are very much things like monitoring and controlling, things like planning, support, things around risk, issues, change in terms of reporting and logging, these kind of things, quality reviews, that kind of stuff. Project officers as well can vary between being something that is very much in a physical presence in an office or even virtually, and also tends to be either permanent or can be disbanded after a project has come to an end. So, for example, a very simple, I suppose, way looking at a project office is previously in my work, I would run a project office of 3 people that were supporting a project on a customer site, and we were there supporting the project manager and the project team in anything and everything across that project. From that, coming up a level to the program office, supporting and assisting the program manager and the program director in them managing an initiative that's actually being delivered as a program. So, for example, the kinds of functions that a program office would have, or I think around stuff like benefits management, information management in terms of data flows coming up from a project up to the program level, things like resource management across the piece, so looking down at all the projects and understanding the interdependencies and that kind of thing. So that's where they're supporting in that the program management office. Again, with a program office, it really does depend on the type of initiative that it's supporting. And again, it can be a permanent structure or a temporary one, depending on the way that the organisation wants to run its programs like that. So, for example, the types of program offices that I come across. So, for example, a large manufacturing program where they've got a lot of different departments and organisations scattered around the country. They would have a central program office, a hub in the HQ, with project offices satellited around in the district or location. Before talking about the final, the pinnacle, there's also something called the Centre of Excellences, which are those kind of organisations that are responsible for ensuring best practice and being, I suppose, the custodian of things like the method, the frameworks, the processes, the tools, the templates, that kind of thing. So sometimes with a Centre of Excellence, they can sometimes be within a programme office structure. I have worked in ones before where you've got people that are working on the operational side, and what I mean by that is by supporting the programme, whereas they've got teams of specialists within the programme office that are very much looking at the best practice stuff. So that term, Centre of Excellence, is also like just come into the whole PMO thing. And then finally, the portfolio offices, which I suspect, I may be wrong, but this is what we're probably going to be talking about today, where we see most failure, is a portfolio office, which is very much reporting at board level to to essentially support the organisation's portfolio of programmes and projects and making sure that they're aligned to the strategy of the organisation. So, for example, the programme office is focused very much on working with senior managers and helping them to make better and more informed decisions, investment decisions, ensuring that the right initiatives are being taken. So, for example, the functions in these kind of offices are things like portfolio build, prioritisation, analysis, planning and estimating at that top level, capacity and resource, monitoring resource management right across the piece, so not only at portfolio level but programme and projects. It has a whole view going right down to the whole of the organisation's programme and project management activities. So I hope that's comprehensive enough and clear enough, but I think that's what, essentially what we've got on the table here for PMOs. So I think when we think, why do PMOs fail, I mean, what are we talking about when we talk about PMOs?
So Lindsay, just to recap, so there are 3 levels of layers when you're talking about project management, or PMOs. It sounds like there are 3 different types of Ps. There's the project, the program, and then the portfolio level. And the portfolio being the highest, more strategic standpoint if you look at it from a triangles perspective. Mm-hmm. So with that said, question for David. So when we're thinking about that diamond shape of leadership and strategy, how can leadership really help contribute to the success or failures of these types of infrastructures, which are PMOs?
Well, obviously leadership is central to the whole thing, and it really applies at 2 different levels. It applies both within the project management organisation or program or portfolio management organisation itself, the PMO, but also in the organisation at large, and leadership issues in the organisation at large are as important as leadership issues within the PMO. Obviously, within the PMO, leadership applies because portfolio or program or project management is about much more than the numbers and the plans and so on. At the end of the day, it's all about getting people to work together, essentially. So it comes down to, can the individual or the office as a whole get people to do the things that the organisation needs done, and quite often to have influence in that area without actually having explicit authority to direct people to do things. Depending on the structure of the organisation and the remit of the PMO, it may or may not have direct control over what's done in the organisation, and so the ability of individuals to interact effectively with other people, namely to lead, is absolutely key to them getting a result. Stepping back from all and looking at the organisation at large, there's a temptation or a tendency for some organisations to create a PMO, and I think that it will do all the difficult stuff for them, and they can get on with the fun things like business strategy and some of the operational things that that are where their hearts really lie. But that's essentially a recipe for disaster, because the PMO won't be able to achieve the big leadership issues without the appropriate backing from the actual leadership of the organisation. What some former colleagues of mine might, with an echo really of defence industry here, would call the top cover required for the PMO. Top cover meaning, is the senior management of the organisation creating the climate in which the PMO can succeed? And if the senior management, for whatever reason, doesn't create the climate, then the PMO will fail. You can be really pretty sure of that. And I have the scars on my back to kind of prove that as well, at least to my own satisfaction. So, I mean, I've learned over the years in a number of organisations trying to achieve things at, if you like, middle level, despite, if you like, a lack of clear senior leadership. And, well, it's very, very difficult, I think there's no doubt. So moving on, I think that some other areas where leadership issues arise is sometimes people try to run projects, particularly where the customer is perhaps a public organisation. The customer, the ultimate customer, may be very close to a very political process, in the sense of actual politics, if you like, electorate and so on, and tend to try and run portfolio and programme and even project issues in a political kind of way. And that also is a big mistake, because the hard numbers actually do need attended to, and bricks and mortar projects actually need the real world, the actual physical dependencies and so on, and logic respected, because you can't build a bridge without doing it in the right order, essentially. Even if it might be politically convenient to lay the deck first before you build the pillars, So, there's a balance really between the human leadership side of things and the numerical or logical side of things. And getting that balance right, I think, is actually key to delivering leadership in and around PMOs successfully. And I think another complication that arises that I certainly would like to mention is, where is there a customer and supplier relationship in and around this? And there often is, of course, and things become further complicated in that area. Is the PMO on the customer side or the supplier side? And I've certainly experienced situations where the customer will contract for lots of what they need done with a supplier, and ask the supplier to create a PMO, and then find themselves in a situation where they've given sufficient authority away to the supplier that they no longer have the controls to get done what they need done, but in fact the supplier doesn't have enough control or power either. So you can end up kind of stuck. So I would kind of summarise by saying that issues of leadership and authority and personal power, i.e. leadership, are absolutely central to getting PMOs to work, or to understanding why they're not working.
That's really interesting. I can see that strong support from the board level is going to be necessary to first of all to actually enable the investment to be released to kick a PMO off, and then they're going to need continued support and I guess a kind of transfer of authority. I think if respect comes down from the board, and the board is clearly valuing the PMO, then that influence is sort of transferred to the PMO and will aid it in doing its job. Obviously, if the PMO doesn't have the leadership support, then it's going to be on a sticky wicket. But I wanted to come at this from a slightly different angle, and I was thinking, actually, an experience that I had was a difficulty in selling the very concept of a PMO to an organization. I'd worked in this small to medium sized organization, and I mean, as a project management evangelist, to me it just seemed like a no-brainer that every organization should have a performing PMO. But I put a proposal together, worked hard. I even brought in an expert from outside the organization to back me up, and I was basically told, what do we need more bureaucracy for? What do I need another back office function for? In this organization, we JFDI. We don't need more template police. So I was wondering whether you could offer any insight into actually answering their problem or their challenge of why do we need a PMO in the first place.
Can I just jump in here? You said that awful phrase that I absolutely hate when it comes to PMOs, which a bit of I tried to sell it to somebody, and and actually the PMO's job is not to sell anything actually, which if you're in that mindset, you're already up I suppose a losing battle would be my initial thoughts. But I just wanted to just talk just generally about project officers and program officers. Don't tend to, in my experience, don't tend to have as much problems in terms of failure, mainly because project officers, program officers are a lot more embedded, a lot more defined. There's a lot more experience. It's been going for a while, having a supporting people or group of people on a project has been going on for quite a long time now. And I think that those two types tend to be okay, because a good project office working with a project manager is valued. They're not seen as somebody policing their project or putting too many controls. They're supposed to be right-hand men or women working alongside the project manager. And when that's done properly at a project level and a program level, it works well. And that comes down to, well, you know, why have you got that project office? What is it there for? What is its remit? What's its objective? And they tend to be very clear at that level, because it is very much about being an operational support through that project. I think the issue where you're getting a lot more PMO failures is more at this portfolio level, because in my experience from people that have been working in PMOs, it's not a natural transition to come from project office, program office, and then into portfolio. The way that I see portfolio is that it's miles apart. We're talking business management here, we're talking about investment and strategy. This is not something that project officers and program officers have traditionally got involved with. And portfolio officers, by and large, in its current form and its current name, are relatively new. And I think when you get things that are relatively new, you're always going to get more rates of failure. You know, that's just the way that I feel at the moment. That partly, and unfortunately, I think a lot of portfolio officers tend to be headed up by people that don't have the experience, don't have the level of experience required to be working at that board level. You know, they're generally people that maybe have not even been through the ranks of project manager, program manager, so don't really have that hands-on delivery experience. And it's a problem. It is a problem, because ultimately who within the whole business landscape is ideally placed to head up something like a portfolio office? You know, who is the natural person to take on that kind of role?
Yeah, Lindsay, I was just going to say something. Sorry, John. I completely agree. I think there is, for the most part, in a lot of organizations, the lack of education of really truly understanding and appreciating the three levels that you've covered around PMOs. I think there's this misnomer that PMOs is just a project management office. And when I think about the concept of portfolio management, you're right, it is a lot more strategic, and many a times, because of that lack of education, it's been my experience that people blend different aspects of project, program, and portfolio to be an all-encompassing type of infrastructure, which then sets itself up for not success but failure, because it's trying to be this, you know, conglomerate of resources, when in reality there's only 3 people dedicated to that particular function that may or may not actually have the skill sets to do that. And what I find, and again, like I've built many different types of PMOs across my career, is that they get dismantled. They have a 2-year lifespan. And a part of it is because of the fact that senior sponsorship just want to be able to either get a control of understanding of the investments that are being done across their, I would say, their business unit, or because of the fact that they just want to be able to have an infrastructure and get an understanding of what you call lieutenants are doing, so be able to spy, if you make a sense, of what people are focusing on. Right or wrong, I think if it's put in its proper place as far as strategy is concerned, there's a lot of value that each of those different levels can provide. It's just a matter of what exactly is the objective of having that office in place. Sorry, John, I know you were going to say something.
Yeah, no worries. I was going to come back to Lindsay and say that she was right, actually, that the P I was referring to was portfolio. The organisation I was working with was running too many projects. Every project was running behind as a result. Morale was being affected because everyone's trying to do, you know, far too many projects, and there's only 40 hours in a week, or maybe a few more. So to me, it seemed second nature. You know, the idea would be bring in a portfolio office, do a proper review of prioritization of projects, and get a proper grip on the level of resourcing required for each project. And that was the sort of functions I was looking to bundle up into the PMO. But I'm really interested in what Lindsay said about what are the characteristics required of the leader of the portfolio office, because that person is going to be sat there in front of directors saying, okay, everybody, you've got 50 projects here, but you've got resources for 30, so what are we going to do? Which ones are we going to stop? I was going to point it at David at this point, because it seems to me it's about leadership, David, what are your reflections on that?
Well, I think it's much more about what's the consciousness of the organisation or the leader of the PMO, the Portfolio Management Office. It's much more about that consciousness than it is about whether you have the office or not. So it's really about, does the organisation have the mindset that allows it, or really the maturity, in fact, the kind of organisational and interpersonal and process maturity to say, if we want to get whatever 40 projects through our set of constraints, if we try and do them all at once, we won't get any of them, whereas if we do 10 and then 10 and then 10 and then 10 to be simple about it, then actually we can get all 40. So it's really about getting coherence, I think. And I think, so in terms of the character of a successful leader of a portfolio management office, it's really about somebody that can take the organisational leadership on a journey of learning that. And it's as much about trust. Can they inspire the trust and confidence of the board members to say, well, we trust this guy or gal to kind of take us by the hand and deliver us all the projects that we want over a period of time, but accept that some of us are going to get what we want before others get what they want. But we kind of all collectively trust that we'll get that. So if that's the kind of process you're thinking of, it becomes very much down to, does the individual have the personal credibility and influencing skills with the senior leadership team? Now, we couldn't always use this word team when we talk about senior leadership, but very often senior leadership of an organisation isn't a team at all. It's a set of individuals. So typically, the portfolio management office person will not only have to deliver the process, they'll also need to make a team out of the senior leadership group as well first before they can deliver that. Sure.
David? Sorry, David. We're losing your audio a bit. Can we switch to your audio only? And maybe you could repeat that last little bit.
Okay, sure. Is that better? Is that better? I have switched on. I think it takes a moment to come up.
We've still got your cam, David. Maybe if you just switch your cam off in the top.
Okay. Okay, just give me a second. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's cool. Yep. Carry on.
It seems to take a moment to bring that up. Okay. The senior leadership group in an organisation typically is not as coherent as a team as we might like to think, or might like to assume. Yeah. Sorry.
Yep, no, that's cool. It's fine. You're just a black hole, that's all. But it's cool. We can hear you. Keep going.
Yeah, I know. Well, I think okay. I just switch on. I think let's not do it. Yeah. Okay, hold on. Yeah, the senior leadership group. We'd like to think that they act cohesively as a team, but in most organisations they actually don't. So the PMO leader, one of the things they will need to be able to do is to get the senior leadership group acting collectively as it makes decisions about which projects or programs to which ones to select or which ones to defer. So leadership skills without authority, without explicit authority, are absolutely key. So in selecting somebody to set up a portfolio or to lead, I think lead is really the key word here, lead a portfolio management office. That influencing without authority is really a key piece.
Excellent. Thank you, David. Go on, Lindsay.
I was just interested to, and partly because of the job that I obviously do, the day job around recruitment and stuff. Portfolio office managers, you don't tend to see many of them on in the marketplace in terms of recruitment. I just wanted to know, my feeling is that you tend to grow these people internally. However, I've often wondered whether that's actually the best place for a leader of this kind of function to come from. And I think it's still a bit of I suppose, a question mark about, what is the best thing? Do you take somebody that is already working at this level and give them this mission? Therefore, you get away from this whole having to sell it to people because actually they are already the champion, they're already the person at board level. But actually, would anybody at board level want to do that job? Is it, there is no, there is no project management representation at board level, and I've heard a lot of people talking about that over the last few years. You don't see a C-level PM person at all. So, is this an opportunity to finally see a C-level PM person? But actually, this is what we're talking about. This is the role.
Is that a
It will
CPO?
always be slightly underneath the board level. It's an interesting one.
Is that a CPO, Lindsay? That sounds like something off Star Wars. The Chief Project Officer.
Yeah.
I actually agree, Lindsay. I think the challenge is that a lot of organizations have various levels of maturity when it concerns projects, and project management in and of itself isn't necessarily a discipline within a lot of organizations, meaning it's not like a finance function, a marketing function, or an HR function. And when you're able to have a function like that, then the infrastructure is there for you to be able to pull people from the market into the organization to have a fresh pair of eyes without having any history or baggage on how to manage some of those things. And I've been seeing in the market that a lot of large financial services institutions are starting to build pockets of that, not at the C-suite level, but pockets of where they're creating functions and career paths for project managers to be able to provide that level of service. It's in the minority at this moment, but I have been seeing some of that trend going on. And I agree with you. I think, having grown up in the organization that I grew up in my first part of my career, it was just about grooming and seeing where you go up in the ladder. But is that the best way of, leading these types of project management offices? I don't think it is, because I've seen many others fail because of the fact that they, it's who you knew and they thought you could do the job, but at the end of the day, they didn't really have the skill set or the ability to, like what David was talking about, influencing without authority. And that's all about leadership and being able to brand and show the value of what that function is meant to do, or office is meant to do. And instead, it becomes, the flavor of the 2 years, I suppose. And so, unfortunately, it's really about the leadership aspect, and also how do you get really skilled people to work with the board as well. When we think about project managers, not all of them are very good at relationship building or, let's say, communication skills. They may be good at putting presentations together and doing the research, but there may be that opportunity to be able to enhance some of those people skills that are essential when we're talking about being able to work at the board level or even at the C-suite level, if that makes sense. So I completely agree with you. I just think it's a slow trend that's taking place at this point in time. And I think more so now, given the fact that we have to do more with less and the economy isn't doing as best as the best that it should be doing. And so as a result of that, we're focusing on that a lot more.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of the group that I'm involved with, which is the Association for Project Management here in the UK, they have a specific interest group, PMOs, and it's obviously something that's been talked about over the last 3-4 years in terms of, how can you protect PMO, how can you make sure that it's not going to be affected by the economic downturn, because traditionally these kind of things have always been pinpointed as being, like you said about the overhead. And it's only in the last couple of years actually that we've been listening to a lot more talks in terms of the way to stop your PMO from being disbanded is to make sure that your PMO starts having a bit more of a business head on it.
Yeah.
So we're moving away from, it's just purely about, the controlling and reviewing what project managers are doing, to actually, what are we doing that's more than just supporting project managers, that actually does have more of a business impact. So, a lot more focus maybe on, the figures that allow them to not only make decisions about whether the project should be stopped or started, but, a whole lot of business objectives. And I think this has been a change for us as a group in the UK to move away from let's talk about how you plan a project and how you can support, right up to now thinking we need to have a new business hat. And that is, it's a challenge, because if you can imagine we've talked about the different layers of people and the different layers of officers that we're talking about here, and we're literally talking about people from right at a junior level that can help, do things like minute taking and stuff like that, right through to somebody that has got that board level. And it's just astounding. It's just, what do we do with this? Because actually we're in danger of turning everybody off, because it's just so confused. There's just so much chattering going on, and we just need to cut through all of that and say, look, this is the objective of this PMO for our organisation. This is what it's doing, in order to affect our bottom line. And that's what we don't do at the moment.
Great stuff. Can I, unfortunately, you know what, time flies when you're having fun, and I've just noticed that we're probably just around the 30-minute mark. Can we run to the last question? And it's going to be a question to each of you, the same question. And all I was going to ask was, we've focused on failure, but we know that there are some really successful PMOs out there as well, and I'm sure you've seen a few in your time. So between us, could we each take a look back on your experience, pull out a PMO that you've observed or worked in, and just tell us something about the characteristics that made it a success. And if we could try and cover the 3 Ps among us, that would be brilliant. So if someone wants to take project, someone take program, someone take portfolio, let's see how it goes. So give it to Bernardo first.
Sure, I will, if it's okay, I'll talk about portfolio because I've been heavily involved on the portfolio side. I would say that the most successful ones that I've experienced are when all the stars are aligned and all the moons and suns and planets. But it does happen, I'd say. And we kind of touched upon it throughout the course of this conversation. It had to do with having a very good sponsor and being able to showcase the portfolio management office. And it also had to do with the leadership of the PMO, so the leader of the PMO, so not just the sponsor, and the maturity level of the organization. And in that situation, it's lasted for quite some time, I'd say, and it's evolved from being a bit more tactical in nature around putting the infrastructure in place to understand how the investments are being made across the entire portfolio, to now being very strategic in understanding, okay, where does it make sense to involve certain economies of scale when we're talking about technology infrastructure or any kind of hubbing of processes or back-end processes from a transactional standpoint, or even looking at third-party vendors to really come in and free up the resources that we currently have from doing administrative or a tactical type of work to becoming a bit more strategic and providing either business intelligence or business analysis around how the organization is functioning. So I've seen that happen in my original company that I worked for, and that has been very successful and continues to be successful. So I think that's what I would say has been really important. Having a strong sponsor, having a strong leader in the PMO, and also having a maturity level in the organization to support that PMO. And for me, those 3 things were very critical to have that PMO be very successful in and of itself.
Thank you, Bernardo.
No problem.
And David, which P are you going to take?
Well, I would go for program, and apologies for speaking from a black screen again here. I hope to put up the overlay, but it doesn't seem to select quickly. Anyway, yeah, program. I mean, I would agree. Most of what, if not all of what Bernardo has just said, applies to program management offices as well. I think the thing that I would just like to add is a mistake that can happen is when people try to manage what's essentially a right brain kind of process, right brain thing, if you like, with a left brain process. It's a mistake I think a lot in the kind of portfolio program project community are liable to make, is to try to solve everything with numbers. Now, the numbers absolutely have their place, so I think the key thing is handle the right brain stuff in a right brain kind of way, and that really means be mindful of, if you like, the emotional journey that people go on as they engage in programs and everything else as well, really, and that's where the leadership piece really comes in. So manage the right brain in a right brain way, and manage the left brain plans and numbers and costs and budgets and so on, in a rigorous left brain way. But apply the right thing in the right place.
Great. That's wonderful. Really interesting. And over to Lindsay.
Project Office. I've seen loads of these that are very, very good. I suppose common things between them is number one, having a generous leader. At this level, it's often you're working with people that may not be very far in their project management career, so it's very much, a place to learn the ropes. And a generous leader is somebody that, for me, when they do it well, teaching, allowing people to learn and do it on the job and supporting them and helping them improve, which ultimately leads to a team of people that are motivated, that are happy, and ultimately leads to a good skill level, which when I find at project office level is that often when it comes to working alongside a project manager and a project team, is that you become like that. You really do become close to your team, and you'll do anything for them, because actually a good project manager working with a project office, again, is generous. A project manager is somebody that will also impart their wisdom and help and show people, I want you to do this for me, I'll show you, I'll take you through it, being very open and very transparent about what's going on in the project. And I think when you get to that level, when you're starting to learn the ropes, you're getting it under your belt, you're building a really great relationship with your project manager and your project team. Ultimately, the project office for that project, they've got their back, and they will do anything to make sure that they're doing the best they can to support them in whatever it is that they need doing. And at project office level, there'll be many hundreds of them across the UK, but they can understand exactly where I'm coming from with that, because it's very much the starting place for a lot of people that are wanting to gain a career in project management, and generally enthusiastic people that want to learn.
Thank you all. I'll hand over to Bernardo for the wrap up.
Well, thank you everyone for being able to join today at the PMTV. Before we actually go, can you, David and Lindsay, let us know how the audience members can actually reach you?
Yeah, sure. And I'll go first. You can catch me on Twitter at ProjectMGMT. You can also catch me on my own blog, which is type into Google, How to Manage a Camel.
Okay, for me, really, everything is most easily accessed on my website, which is, of course, www.drdavidfraser.com, and doctor is spelled D-R, and then it's D-A-V-I-D-F-R-A-S-E-R. So I'm on Twitter and LinkedIn and so on as well, but everything can be accessed on that website.
We'll make sure that we have those contact details on the website as well on pmtv.pro, so that way, in case people missed it, they can contact you directly. John?
As you know, hopefully, I'm John Hyde from publicsectorpm.com.
And I'm Bernardo Torrado from the Project Box. Thank you again so much for being able to join us. Until next time, take care.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.